Hello, welcome to the outsourcing presentation presented to you today by SM Biz Consulting. Today we will share information on the processes, risks, and continued monitoring necessary to achieve a successful third-party relationship. We will discuss outsourcing preparation, contract types, and risk management. The first step in the functional evaluation third-party process is to identify the potential processes or functions that can be considered for outsourcing. This process generally should not be a major operational one or one that supports your strategic goals, as these are of primary importance to your company's strategy and brand quality. Some of the most common functions are usually those that are support, marketing, or sales functions, customer service, finance, human resources. The slide contains the potential list. However, if your company has some unique activities that may qualify, these should be included. While you are not directly responsible for drafting the contract, as this would be either the legal department or your lawyer, it is important to understand the types of contract available for engagements. Therefore, once you know which functions will be evaluated for outsourcing, it is helpful to understand the type of contract that may be best suited for each engagement. There are three types: fixed price, dedicated team, and time and materials. Generally, unless you are doing technology or project outsourcing, you would be selecting dedicated team. This covers a more daily processing scope, such as customer service. Another important consideration should be the flexibility needed within the project being outsourced. This slide outlines the major steps required to go through the process of identification and evaluation through to vendor evaluation and selection. Let's begin by considering some details for process identification. Before beginning a review of potential processes, it is important to have a team in place to perform the evaluation. It is critical to make sure there is an executive sponsor and champion, as this ensures the acceptance of the initiative. The second step is for the team to prepare a list of potential functions to be evaluated. The team should then develop a list of evaluation criteria to be utilized. This is critical in ensuring equity during the evaluation. The slide provides some common criteria. However, there may be unique ones specific to your company, project, or functions. In looking it over, it is evident that criteria related to skills, process complexity, reputational concerns, and cost savings would most likely be universal. Your list should be reflective of your company's strategic goals and culture. Once each function evaluation is complete, the next step is to identify the expected engagement goal or goals, the scope of the transferred activity, and some initial framework for monitoring vendor performance. Once a contract may be awarded, you should also understand who is responsible and what would need to be monitored. Finally, identify budget dollars available as well as potential cost savings for each possible function being considered for outsourcing. When the final outsourced process or processes have been identified, it's time to turn your attention to detailing the requirements that the third party must follow and meet. Specificity is important for this phase. To ensure specificity, it is important that relevant stakeholders participate in developing the requirements. Major components of the requirement include detailed information on services the third party is expected to perform, identification of any standards or regulations that must be followed, timetable or schedule for processes, turnaround times, expected customer response times are examples, specific customer service performance measures that must be met, skill sets for performing processes at the third party. If your company has other requirements that are deemed important to quality or production times, these need to be included as well. Prior to sending out third-party requests for proposal, perform due diligence on which vendors appear to best meet your requirements by reviewing websites, other available materials, possible industry documentation. This will allow you to streamline your request to those vendors with the best potential to meet your needs. This may also be the time to quell out those that may be outside your budget. Once the requirements are set and some potential vendors identified, it is time to select no less than 3 and no more than 5 vendors for a more in-depth review and possibly demo scheduling. Again, it is important that relevant stakeholders and individuals responsible for vendor monitoring and relationships should be part of the vendor review process. For the final list of vendors, perform due diligence also on vendors' financials, reputation, and industry experience. Once this is complete, it's now time to submit your request for proposals to selected vendors to obtain their specific information on how they can best provide the services you need. Preparing the RFQ and RFP, that is request for proposal and request for quotation. First, it's important to understand the difference between the two. Also recognize that sometimes it may be beneficial to request a quote along with the proposal, especially if there is a time constraint involved. The RFP, however, should never be shortcut, as this is the heart of the vendor evaluation process, where you are able to obtain specificity on what the vendor can do so that you will be able to compare their services to your requirements. The RFQ, on the other hand, is primarily in place to be able to obtain vendor pricing. And let us take a look at what are the important components. This slide highlights the primary differences and the information obtained for each. The primary distinction between these two documents is the specificity of information contained. The RFP provides information on how the vendor will provide the requested service, such things like identifying evaluation criteria, cost, experience, technical capabilities, timelines, etc. While the RFQ is primarily the price information and timetable information. Each proposal submitted will need to be thoroughly vetted by your evaluation team. It is possible additional information from a vendor may be needed, and these should be requested prior to any decisioning. While you are waiting for the responses, it is time to ensure your evaluation process is in place. Gather the information team members and develop the guidelines for review. These will cover procedural issues of the evaluation, including any requests for additional information from vendors. Create templates or scorecards to grade each vendor on the pertinent components of the RFP. When you receive RFP responses, carefully have each member review and provide feedback. If there are open questions, make sure these are forwarded to the vendor and responses received before any final decision is made. Make sure the review covers not only the process detailed requirements, but also pertinent vendor information. The review should also highlight any areas where there may need to be internal changes. These need to be evaluated and understood prior to selection. Ensuring the contract has all the necessary components covered is important. We previously discussed the three types of contracts available for third-party relationships: time and material, fixed price, and dedicated team. Make sure you have properly identified the type relevant to the relationship type being established. No matter what the contract type, there are components that need to be in the contract. While generally your legal department or company attorney will handle the contract language, it should be reviewed by relevant stakeholders to ensure that the detailed service description, measurable service level information, duration are all accurate and acceptable. Additionally, any regulatory requirements, data protection requirements, and performance monitoring should be detailed. These items should all align with the information found in the detailed requirements and RFP information established during the outsourcing process. While there is a level of reasonable comfort found in following the process steps, there remains the need to provide a risk management identification and monitoring program for vendors. It is important to recognize that while the process is now being performed outside your company, it remains your responsibility to ensure that any related risks are managed. Remember, your client thinks you are performing the work. Thus, there is a need to understand what risks there are within the transferred process and what controls are needed. This should be documented so that those responsible for monitoring the vendor's performance understand what to look for and how to properly evaluate the performance. Make no mistake, there are several areas of risk that can be found in vendor outsourcing, and each needs your attention and monitoring. The most typical are highlighted on this slide. So what does an adequate vendor monitoring program look like? There are certain components that must be in place and documented. There is the need for a set of procedures that outlines schedules and responsibilities, checklists and/or questionnaires that cover the risks and critical components of the process being performed, and review of vendor audits. These cover the service aspect of the relationship. You should also perform an annual review of financials, business continuity plans, process diagrams when processes changes are put in place, security documentation, and business resumption plans. All these factors will help ensure the vendor is performing at a high level and ensuring quality and continuous performance. Thank you for joining us today on our outsourcing presentation. We hope the information provided has been useful to you. If we can be of further assistance, please feel free to contact us through email, a website request, or phone. Thank you very much and have a nice day.